Let's talk about bacterial meningitis. What exactly is bacterial meningitis? Well, bacterial meningitis is an inflammation of the meninges wherein bacteria, like Streptococcus pneumoniae, invades the subarachnoid space. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, let's talk about the history. It was Thomas Willis in the 1600s that had the first records of meningitis. But it wasn't until 1886 and 1887 when Albert and Anton provided definitive identification of the bacteria that cause bacterial meningitis.
In Canada, 4,100 individuals are affected, out of which 500 die due to bacterial meningitis. Thanks to vaccines, the number of people who get bacterial meningitis has decreased over the years. However, 4 to 10% of infants who get bacterial meningitis succumb to the disease. Bacterial meningitis affects individuals all over the world, but mostly affects those living in developing countries. For example, 1 million people are affected by the disease in the sub-Saharan region of Africa. The majority of people that are affected by bacterial meningitis are the elderly, who are often already sick due to old age, and the very young because they are small and their immune systems are weak. When it comes to men and women, bacterial meningitis affects both genders at an equal rate.
The healthy human body is able to fight off disease in two main ways. Physical barriers like mucus and membranes make up the first line of defense, and the immune system makes up the second and most important line. The immune system works through complex pathways of many interacting cells, like white blood cells, T cells, macrophages, and microglia. And they're very, very strong. When an invader is detected, they will engulf or otherwise destroy the microorganism. Bacterial meningitis starts in the nasal pathway where, despite mucus and membrane and other primary forms of defense, the bacteria that have colonized this area are able to enter into the bloodstream. But in the blood, the bacteria gets recognized by our immune system cells, which are then ready to mount their defenses and attack these villainous pests. And while some may die, others are able to cross the blood-brain barrier and get to the brain. But here, there are more microglia that are ready to attack. And this war waging in your brain, well, it can lead to brain damage, swelling, hemorrhage, and cognitive deficits.
Now that we know a bit more about bacterial meningitis, what can be used to cure it? Treatment is really dependent on the type of bacteria invading your body, but treatments we are going to look at cure bacterial meningitis caused by Streptococcus pneumoniae and Neisseria meningitidis. The first is penicillin G, sold under the name Pfizerpen, which is a benzyl penicillin and a broad-spectrum beta-lactam characterized by the square nitrogen ring. The common side effects are diarrhea, seizures, and anaphylactic shock. The next drug is cefotaxime, or clafuran, which is a beta-lactam antibiotic, just with an additional part on the molecule compared to penicillin. The side effects of this drug include allergic reactions, inflammation at the infection site, and C. difficile infection.
Antibiotics prevent bacteria from making protective walls against our immune system. Think of bacteria like villages that have proteins acting as construction workers building the village. Now let's focus on the construction workers that help in building a large wall for protection against our immune system. These are called transpeptidase and penicillin binding protein. Their job is to link together what we can think of as a brick and mortar, peptidoglycan. Antibiotics have protein sequences that act as decoy pieces of brick, confusing PBP and transpeptidase. They bind instead to this decoy protein sequence on antibiotics and forget about building the peptidoglycan wall to protect the village. Without this wall, our immune system can kill the cell. The best way to prevent oneself from getting bacterial meningitis is by getting vaccinated. Vaccines give the natural disease-fighting soldiers of our immune system extra protective gear by making them familiar with the bacteria that cause bacterial meningitis. If they know how the enemy looks like, they'll be better at fighting it before it causes serious damage. Other important ways to protect yourself from getting bacterial meningitis are staying away from cigarettes and smoking, avoiding contact with people if you're the one who falls ill, or from those who you know are sick, maintaining a good hygiene like washing your hands often, and keeping a healthy diet to build a strong immune system. Ensuring that the disease is caught early and treated quickly will prevent serious damage.
To summarize, the common bacteria causing meningitis are Streptococcus pneumoniae and Neisseria meningitidis. The common symptoms are fever, headache, and vomiting. The two common treatments are penicillin G and cefotaxime. The medication works by preventing cell wall synthesis, and the ways to prevent bacterial meningitis is by getting vaccinated, eating healthy, and staying active.